We requested, you asked, we got questions from listeners in a mailbag episode for today. We'll talk about moves the Dodgers can still make this offseason. We'll talk about Clayton Kershaw. Might talk a little bit about the shortstop position and more. So let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become an everydayer, all you got to do is listen or watch every day. And boom, you're an everydayer. If this is your first time listening or watching, I'm Vince Samperio, joined by my co-host Jeff Snyder. Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans that have spent almost all our life watching the Dodgers. We've spent the last few years of our life covering the Dodgers in various ways. One of those ways being this here podcast. We're not quite insiders, but we're just here to bring you smart and rational thoughts about the Dodgers, and maybe a little bit irrational sometimes. And I don't think we'll get too irrational today. We'll keep it a little bit more sane because there's not really too much to talk about in the sense of Dodger news because there was none. But we do have a lot of questions from you guys and some fresh questions. So that's very welcome. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Before we jump into the questions, I guess there was a little bit of news. Jock Peterson, former Dodger Jock Peterson, who has spent the last, 2 years with the Giants, is staying in the National League West, going to the D-backs. And with the D-backs, we don't have to worry about him ever playing the outfield because they actually have way more good defensive outfielders than any team should have. And so he will be strictly a DH and probably getting a lot of starts against the Dodgers since the Dodgers have a lot of right-handed starting pitchers, and that's who Jock will play against. So kind of fun that he's staying in the NL West. We'll get to keep seeing him. And, he's 60% of the way now to the Steve Finley, Matt Hergis complete NL sweep. He ties Matt Kemp now at 60%. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. If anything, I think that's better for the Dodgers in the long term that JD Martinez didn't go be the DH there, that Jock Peterson is. I'm assuming JD has a season like he did last year. So.
Yeah. And JD isn't really a splits guy. So he's not really a guy you sign just to be the right-handed half of a DH platoon. So yeah, he'll probably be going elsewhere, although he could still go to the Giants, I guess.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah. Beyond that, there was one other signing in the big leagues. David Robertson went to somebody, the Rangers. So the two teams that were in the World Series last year made moves on the same day, and realistically, probably not going to play each other again in the World Series this year. So
pessimistic.
All right. So, like I said, we asked for a question. You guys asked questions, and we're going to hop right into it. The first segment will focus a little bit on Clayton Kershaw since we do get a few questions. We appreciate you guys that aren't everydayers. Even, we appreciate everydayers a little bit more, but aren't everydayers. We got a question with James Paxton sign. How's that impact Kershaw coming back? Quick answer that we talked about on the other day's episode is that it doesn't affect it. If the Dodgers want to sign Clayton Kershaw, they're going to sign Clayton Kershaw. On that note, one person, Chris, asked, does Kershaw retire a Dodger? And then our buddy Kevin, Blue Goon 82, says, how good do you think Kershaw can be if he is re-signed? Kevin is in the minority of believing that Kershaw can be a viable, effective option later this year. He says he wants some hope from us because he's pessimistic.
Yeah. I do think Kershaw retires as a Dodger. I don't think he's going anywhere else. I just can't see that happening. As for Kevin's question, it depends on what you mean by good. Kevin, he doesn't see him as a viable, effective option. I think he's a viable, effective option. I don't think Clayton Kershaw is going to be a number one starter. Shoulder injuries are, hard to come back from, and it's hard to gauge how good somebody's going to be. When Kershaw was healthy last year, he was very, very good. He didn't do it the same way he did when he was winning the Cy Young Award every year, but he was almost as effective as he was back when he was winning the Cy Young Award every year. And he struggled later in the season. Obviously, struggled in his one game in the postseason. That was presumably shoulder related. And so, if the surgery works and he comes back healthy, I think part of the reason that guys maybe struggle after shoulder surgery is they're trying to build up to, if you have shoulder surgery at age 28, you're trying to get 8 more years out of your shoulder after the surgery. Kershaw, I think, just wants to get 55 more strikeouts, and like not like he's just playing for the 3,000 strikeouts, but I think he recognizes that his career is nearly over, and so he can go out and give it his all, and not worry too much about long-term health of his shoulder. It's not something that's going to affect his quality of life. He can, even if he has to have another shoulder surgery when he's done, he'll be able to. It's presumably not going to ruin his quality of life. So it really is just the ability to pitch that he's going to be worried about. So I think Kershaw will be a perfectly solid, number 4, number 5 starter type if he does come back this year, if he gets healthy enough to come back this year. And that's kind of my mindset going in, and anything more will just be a bonus because I think there's potential for more. I think he could be very good, but the Dodgers don't necessarily need him to be very good. They just need him to, if he does come back, he needs to be serviceable because the Dodgers are going to have a good offense. And if he can, pitch reasonably well and get through 5 innings per start, I think they'll take that.
For me, I think the bigger question as a whole is what's he coming back for? And I know you mentioned the strikeouts. And, obviously by whenever he's able to return, we'll have a clearer picture of health and everything else for the Dodgers. But I think if everyone stays healthy and takes that step, or whether take that step or just be healthy, does Kershaw even make a playoff roster in that sense? If it's, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Buehler, Miller as the 4 starters, and then, or, do you say, okay, we're going to give Kershaw a spot in the rotation if he pitches well down the stretch and move, Buehler or Miller to a different type of role? That, I think that's the question that I have of if he does come back is it going to be a thing where I just want to come back and not go out on that note and I don't really care about, if I don't make the postseason roster, it's okay? Or is it more of I want to come back for myself? I want to, I think that's kind of the question of everything. Because like I said, I think he can come back and be a perfect number 5 starter. Like I said, 5 innings, still rack up some strikeouts. The slider was still played last year, even though the other stuff is diminished. The slider is not diminished. It still gets that swing and miss like it did. Not quite the same level, but similar to the same level it used to before. I think for me, that's where the big question is all right, if he does come back and everything's perfect and everyone else is perfect, which obviously is probably not going to be the case, but I do think it would be a big question mark at that point if that was the case.
Yeah, it's so hard to predict a postseason roster, even a month in advance, let alone 7 months in advance, because health is the big thing there. And, but I don't think they're going to give Kershaw a roster spot as a charity, definitely not a rotation spot in the postseason. I could see him being on the roster as, you're going to be our long relief guy, and you may or may not pitch. And maybe, if they get to the World Series and, they're up 3 games to none in the World Series, maybe they let him close out game 4, and finish the game on the mound. But I don't think, I think their goal is going to be to win the World Series, not to have a going away party for Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah, and the other part is if they aren't healthy, let's just say they sign Kershaw, he's due back in, August or early September, and they're not healthy before the deadline, I don't think Clayton Kershaw precludes them from going after another arm if they need to, which is why, Kevin's question is viable, but I don't think at any point is he going to be counted on to be more than a 5 innings back of the rotation guy.
Yeah,
which
they
I think he
built
can
their
be
roster.
easy.
Yeah, they built this roster this offseason on the assumption that if Kershaw's there, he's not going to be the ace there, and they don't know if he's going to be there.
Yeah. All right, we have more questions from you guys about the outfield, about moves the Dodgers might still make, a couple other things. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. If you are looking to go to an event, a game, a concert, comedy shows, stuff like that, Gametime is the easiest way to get all tickets to sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And right now, all users get $100 off when they buy a big game ticket with code Vegas100. If you want an extra $100 right there, you got a big game ticket, Vegas 100. The big game is in Las Vegas this year. It's in a few weeks. You can go check it out. Go check out the Gametime app. And if you're looking to be there for it, you can use the code Vegas 100 and get $100 off your ticket. Gametime's the only ticketing app that gives you peace of mind with your purchase. They got the Gametime guarantee. They have pictures from all the seats that you can check out and see what your view would look like. And they have deals all the way to the start of the event and sometimes after the event starts. So go check out the Gametime app right now and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Right now, Gametime users get $100 off a big game ticket with code Vegas100. Terms apply. Just download the Gametime app and use code VEGAS100 for $100 off a big game ticket. Or if you're not going to the game, use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. We also want to thank you if you're an everydayer. That means you listen or watch every day. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Podcast Network has two 24/7 streaming channels that you can check out that might be of interest to you on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. They are 24/7 streaming channels going over the news and stories from around the sports world and the LA sports world with Locked On hosts and experts and pretty much anybody else that you go to for your news in the Locked On world. So go check those out and subscribe on YouTube. All right, Jeff, I'll just keep leading this show in terms of the questions. We had a question about the outfield at Truth or Dingers at the MLB Top 10 dropped first last night for center field. I saw the Shredder had James Outman number 6. I believe James Outman. I'm assuming this question is because James Outman was higher than Cody Bellinger because he asked, is James Outman better than Cody Bellinger?
Yeah, Cody Bellinger wasn't actually on the list, and I assume that's because he played a lot of first base last year, and there is uncertainty over where he's going to play. You know, Mookie Betts didn't make the right field list. He made the second base list because he's expected to play second base this year. And so I think if anything, that tells us they're expecting Bellinger to at least play some significant amount of time at first base, probably. Because I do think that, and you can make a case that last year it was pretty close between Bellinger and Outman. Obviously, Bellinger has an MVP and a Rookie of the Year under his belt. Outman has 1 year in the big leagues, and so it's tough to tell what to expect. But yeah, I think the main reason Outman was listed above Bellinger is because Bellinger wasn't on the list because he's not expected to be an outfielder. With that said, I would, it's hard to separate out the contracts for what they're expected to be paid. I would definitely rather have Outman than Bellinger in 2024. Even if all the money was equal, I love Cody Bellinger. I'm not convinced that he is going to be great in 2024. I'm only moderately convinced he's going to be good in 2024. And so, and I think there's probably teams that are feeling the same way. And that's why he's still available on the free agent market because he was wanting a big contract. And I don't know if that big contract is coming. And so that's kind of my thoughts. Yeah. I take Outman over Bellinger right now, but not by a huge margin. And Bellinger is so unpredictable. Bellinger could be twice as good as James Outman this year, or he could be, half as good because there's such a wide range of what we can reasonably expect from Bellinger.
Yeah, obviously Bellinger has the higher ceiling. I don't think as good as Outman can be, I don't know if he'll ever reach the numbers that Bellinger did his MVP year. I think for me, yeah, it comes to the point of Outman being, he had the really good first month, and then he struggled he really struggled the second month, and then he kind of found his way the rest of the season and ended up, with pretty solid numbers for a rookie. Was up there in Rookie of the Year voting and everything else. And I think with Outman, Cody Bellinger's swing has been, changed and moved and talked about. And I guess not his swing so much as his stance and getting to the point where he swings is more of the problem. Where Outman is a much calmer, less violent swing. I think it's definitely easier to kind of fix the flaws. So I think consistency wise, I think with Outman, you'll have a little bit of a lower floor or a lower ceiling, but you'll have a floor that's consistent. And I think for what the Dodgers have in their lineup right now, Outman fits it perfect.
Yeah, I am a little nervous about Outman too, though. There's always a sophomore slump, and I'm hoping that slump in the middle of his rookie year was his sophomore slump, and that he's already past that. But yeah, we'll see. This isn't in this mailbag, but a few weeks ago I talked about how Outman hit lefties pretty well, and that our same buddy Kevin at Blue Goon 82 kind of pushed back on that because Outman, his OPS plus was pretty lousy against lefties. His batting average was solid, but he didn't have any power basically. And so that dragged down his overall numbers. And I'm interested to see how that develops this year. The thing that's encouraging to me is that his strikeout rate against lefties wasn't really any higher than it was against righties. And so he's making contact. And so I think the power will come, but it's just a matter of, that's something that remains to be seen. And that's going to be the big question of, is Outman legitimately an everyday star player, or is he eventually a platoon guy? And I think we'll learn a lot about that this year.
Yeah. All right. Well, this question is interesting from Jacob Norling. He says, what are the odds of a new road alternate? He mentions back to the classic white piping / outline or a City Connect jersey to maximize on the Otani Yamamoto revenue. He says he asked because he's one of those begging for more than the current playing Dodgers gray. I'll go real quick on this front. I think with Nike at this point, anything can happen. I think the Dodger home jerseys will stay the same, even though those have kind of changed in the sense of how the lettering is spaced out and everything else. But I do think that Dodgers home will always be good. The fact that they have the City Connect alternate already was already a change enough, even though they had them back in the day. But for us, so I think that City Connect, I think there's still teams that need them, and I would assume they're on some type of schedule. So I don't think the Dodgers are due for a new one. I don't see them releasing anything this close to the regular season at this point. I do think down the line, though, the Dodgers are going to get some different type of alternatives. Because if you look at the NBA, and NBA is not as old school as like baseball when it comes to jerseys and everything else, but those teams get a new jersey every year, and they're not anywhere near some of their regular team uniforms.
Yeah, I was wondering, at least half wondering recently, if the Dodgers might try to get a refresh on their City Connect simply because the current one is so closely tied to Julio, just because they would wear it pretty much every time he pitched, and with them distancing themselves from him at this point, and obviously he's not coming back to the organization. And, I wondered if they might try to push for something, but it like you said, it's probably not really up to them. It's on a schedule, and so it is what it is. I wouldn't mind seeing the white outline on the road grays. I don't have a strong feel. I like the simple gray, and somebody else responded to Jacob and said the majority of fans just want the home whites and away grays, and I probably kind of fit into that. Like, I definitely don't want anything too crazy, but the picture that Jacob put on his tweet is a picture of the Dodgers celebrating winning the 1988 World Series title. And they had the white outline on the numbers. They had the white piping on the sleeves. And I don't mind that at all. I don't really, I wouldn't say I miss it, but I wouldn't be even a tiny bit sad if they brought it back. It might just be that I'm too easy to please when it comes to uniforms. As long as you keep it pretty basic and it says Dodgers on it, I'm going to like it. Maybe that says more about me than anything else.
Yeah, recently we saw the Yankee jerseys are losing the piping on their road grays, going back to older look. So the Dodgers would have to gain piping to go back to an older look. So again, it's possible, but
Yeah, and I just wonder if the piping is like if it would be seen as kind of an late 80s, early 90s look like it. I don't know if that's old enough to be retro. The Yankees are going back to like pre-1973 look, and the Dodgers pre-1973 look was very similar to what they have right now. And so I don't know if it would look old school or just outdated.
yeah. Again, we'll see what Nike does in the future for the Dodgers. I feel like we might get a little wild with baseball uniforms in the coming years. But
yeah.
All right, more questions on the way. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL regular season is over. The NFL postseason is almost over. So there's not much time right now to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Remember, right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. So it doesn't matter if you think the Lions are going to win or the Niners are going to win. You can bet either way. Put $5 on it, and you're gonna get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, guaranteed. So go download the Gametime app right now. And remember, there's other ways to bet. You can check it out. They got same game parlays that you can build, different things that happen in the same game. You can use the Explore tab to find bets that people are putting together or using and see if those pique your interest. Or you can make a general parlay in the Parlay Hub where you can, pick winners and points and a bunch of different things from over a few different games. So there's a lot of ways to make that $5 bet. So go check out the FanDuel app right now. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. And make your first bet today. That's FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. This episode is also brought to you by Logix. We get a lot of in-depth analysis and sometimes some hot takes on this show, but right now we have our hottest take, and that's that the best lineup in LA is the lineup of auto loans at Logix. They start off with the favorites, the proven and dependable new and used vehicle loans. You can count on these guys to give you low rates and save you big time bucks. You move on to the exciting new rookie sensation, the electric vehicle loans with super low rates and flexible payment terms. And then you round out the lineup with their auto refinancing loans and lease buyout loans. With those, you can lower your monthly payments and get on the road to owning your car faster. And it's a hot take, but seriously, no one can beat the lineup at Logix. So visit your local Logix branch right here in LA and surrounding areas and let one of their amazing members help you out. Or just apply online in minutes at logixbanking.com/car. That's LOGIX banking.com/CAR. Go right now. I want to thank you for being an everydayer. If you're not an everydayer, all you got to do is listen or watch every day. You can find us every fan podcast and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you can go beyond the podcast with subtext. You can go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers, and you can have a direct line to us with texting, be part of the group, talk about the Dodgers, talk about signings and thoughts and everything else that happens. And then once the season starts, I'm sure it'll get popping during Dodger games. So go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers and get locked in now. All right, Jeff, we got a couple questions about the Dodgers offseason the rest of the way. And one of them talks about are the Dodgers making any more moves from @Grumpy805. I guess that's the one about the offseason. There's a couple other ones about later on in the year, but I guess real quick right now, Dodgers making any more moves. I'm in the boat of I don't think they are now.
Yeah, at least nothing major. Like, it still wouldn't shock me if Kike Hernandez found that the market for him to be a starter somewhere isn't what he was looking for. And maybe he says, I do want to play a utility type role for the Dodgers. I'm not sure exactly how he would fit. But if he wanted to come back, I could see them doing something like that. Beyond that, it's hard to really see them with having signed Paxton now. Like, it seems like their rotation is set, or at least they have all the guys who are going to be in their rotation. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I guess you had seen an article saying maybe the Dodgers still need to address the shortstop position, but it seems to me like they are pretty intent on letting Gavin Lux have a shot at shortstop. They were going to do it last year, and having Miguel Rojas as a fallback option is a good fallback option. Obviously, Rojas didn't hit very well at all last year, although he did hit better later in the season, started to show a little bit of pop, and maybe it wouldn't be the end of the world if he does get thrust back into the starting role. I mean, they won 100 games with him as a starter last year, but yeah, it seems like Gavin Lux is a shortstop, and if you go position by position, there's nothing left that you would think they're planning on addressing.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was that had the article, and it was basically a question like, "Do the Dodgers do anything else this offseason?" And it's one of those where I think they just mentioned shortstop because if you did go position by position, that would be kind of the weak spot right now. Shortstop, assuming you're counting on Hayward and you're counting, well, basically just Hayward now at this point. So, yeah, Willie Adames is there to stay. They signed Rhys Hoskins. They're trying to win. Tim Anderson's on the market, but there's a reason he's still on the market. We maybe last year I could have talked myself into it, but at this point, there's no way to talk yourself into it. I think it's one of those kind of with the bullpen now. I guess if you had to do two things, it'd be the bullpen and it'd be shortstop, and it would be nitpicking at this point for us to expect them to make any big moves there, or not nitpicking, but it would be, for them, it would be getting better on the margins at this point. But I think with Lux specifically and with the bullpen, it comes down to you don't need to have your full roster right now when the season starts. You need the full roster in October. And if Gavin Lux doesn't work out, if the bullpen does need help, if somebody does get hurt in the rotation or in the starting lineup, the Dodgers have more than enough prospect depth to make moves if they need to. I think that's where the Dodgers are. In years past, where the Dodgers have been is where they've had multiple positions that were kind of iffy and needed, best case scenarios in order for things to work out. Especially last year, we needed a lot of best case scenarios, and it didn't quite work out that way, at least on the pitching end. Where this year, you really only have best case scenarios in a few spots, and if anything happens to the other spots, that's nothing you could plan for. So I think they're good right now with the way to start season, and they have more than enough means to go out and get better if they need to during the season.
Unless Randy Rosarena becomes available, in which case go get him.
Yeah, true. On that note, with Gavin Lux, we have time for one more, and we'll get to the rest next week. But someone did ask about Gavin Lux directly, and they are Elise Ryan. She just said, "Can you talk about Gavin Lux?" And between us, you are the Lux fan, so you have the floor, Jeff.
Yeah, I'll talk about Gavin Lux.
Not that I'm not a fan, but you're more the fan.
Yeah, we know what you mean. I'm excited for Gavin Lux. I am a little bit nervous. The defense was going to be a question mark anyway, and coming off knee surgery, and with a left side infield of Gavin Lux and Max Muncy has potential to be average. It also has potential to be quite a bit below average defensively, and that's something that I'm interested to see. Offensively, I'm pretty excited. I think Lux is going to be in a role, probably batting ninth, no pressure on him, and just able to. He's going to get plenty of pitches to hit because he's going to have Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and Shohei Ohtani hitting right behind him, and so hopefully he's going to kind of in 2022, until he struggled the last few weeks of the season, he was like a legitimately very good hitter that year. He basically roughly the same kind of hitter that Trey Turner was. And then he struggled. So his overall season numbers looked worse because he struggled the last few weeks. But, if he can bounce back, I don't expect him to be that right off the bat because it will be a year and a half since he's seen, a pitcher who is actually trying to get him out. But he is a very, very good hitter. He was the minor league player of the year for a reason a few years ago. He's an extremely good athlete, one of the best athletes on the team. Everything about Gavin Lux excites me. And I think that it is time for him to get that everyday opportunity and knowing that he has room to ramp up and get his feet under him and without worrying about losing his job. I think it's going to be a really good year offensively for Gavin Lux. And I'm hoping it's going to be a solid year defensively.
One thing I'll add to that is with Lux is, I'm excited to see him come back. I know we've talked about this a couple of times, how coming back from ACL, he might not be fully there in terms of explosiveness and everything else. Acuña Acuña's a different type of player than Lux in some sense, and he does play outfield, which is a little different. So I feel like it might not affect Lux as much, and Lux, have a full year to kind of recover, where Acuña had less than a full year. But I think kind of what we saw last year when Brandon Nimmo signed with the Mets, and I saw a few articles kind of mention this, that him being from Wyoming, the Mets were betting on the fact that in the baseball world, he's a little bit less developed. Just being from Wyoming, you can go out and face everybody, but your college is probably a little bit, or not your college, your high school games are probably a little bit weaker. You don't play as much because of the weather, everything else. Lux kind of fits that, being from Wisconsin. And it's one of those things where maybe we saw that slow development. He didn't quite bust out when he first came onto the scene. He didn't quite have the impact that we saw from Seager and Bellinger, but he was serviceable. Then the next year, not still kind of struggled a little bit, and then the next year is when he kind of really, I think I have my years right, is when he had that big year at the bottom of the lineup. So I do look forward to that progression for him. And again, I'm not rooting against him, but there's question marks.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And hopefully he'll answer them with exclamation points.
Need that. All right. That's going to do it for today's episode. We have more questions. We will address them. I would assume there's not much news coming from the Dodgers end, so we'll still have room for questions. So if you have more questions, make sure to send them our way. I'll get through all that right now. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Make sure to find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. Becoming every day by listening or watching every day. You can go beyond the podcast and speak to us directly through text at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Locked On Podcast Network has 2 24/7 streaming channels that might be of interest to you. Locked On Sports Today, Locked On Sports Los Angeles, all day, all night, 24/7 on YouTube, streaming with Locked On experts and Locked On hosts going through about their sports, friend news, and everything else. You can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Our Instagram is revived, Locked On Dodgers. We have a TikTok now that we're slowly trying to start using too. That's also at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at SnyDog. I'm at Vincents91. You can DM us for any questions, comments, or concerns. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us when you get in your car, or if you're at home. Text My Device Play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you on Monday.